So to begin with, I think what should be a very strong relation of the EU with South Asia has actually turned into a very strong relationship of the EU with India to the exclusion of everybody else. And I say this because till 1979, before the Afghanistan jihad, our relations with the European Union were very constructive. We had investors from there, we had transfer of technology, and because Europe and Pakistan, let us say, have civilizational contacts. We are both civilizational areas, and a lot of our, our thinking, our, philosophical orientations, our trade has been exchanges with Europe. So in that context, I think the relationship still lacks the depth and the intensity that it should. And the other South Asian countries, if I may speak on their behalf as well, feel that while along with India, we were also colonized, because of geostrategic and geopolitical and geoeconomic considerations, EU's attitude towards India has transcended and has now transformed into a strategic partnership, while that mindset of colonialism and of patronizing and sanctions and of petty development assistance is still there, and many of my colleagues here have said it. I don't want to repeat it. Naturally, there is no morality where national interests are concerned, and we have seen that. While EU considers itself to be the citadel of human rights and democracy and, rule-based principles, unfortunately, the reality is on the contrary. I will give you the example of Kashmir. I found it very strange when one of my colleagues in his presentation said that Kashmir was not a multilateral issue. Excuse me, there were 9 co-sponsors to the resolutions on Jammu and Kashmir in the UN Security Council. And many of them were your European colleagues, including Belgium and Ireland and some other countries. So it is an issue, an international issue that was brought to the United Nations Security Councils by India, co-sponsored by our European partners. And it still is on the agenda. To say that it's not an international issue, I think is not historically or presently correct. As far as human rights are concerned, yes, every development assistance, however little, that is given to, I will only restrain myself to South Asian countries other than India, is absolutely conditional, including the GSP plus, to the 27 human rights, conventions, international conventions that we have also signed, and we are proud that we are following those conventions. But, the people of Pakistan question. The people of Bangladesh question. The people of Sri Lanka and Bhutan and Maldives question the basis on which this selective morality and principle of upholding human rights is undertaken by the European Union. What is happening in Jammu and Kashmir, almost the genocide that is happening there, we see The EU still pumping armament and aid and investments and everything in India. And there's not a word about what is happening in Jammu and Kashmir. There is not a word of any, caution or anything about what Mr. Modi has turned India into, a fascist state where not only the human rights of the Muslims, the Christians, the Sikhs are being blatantly violated, but also of their own lower caste Hindus. So let us not really, I don't even want to go into this debate of rule-based, systems and democracy. These are all cliches which are used when it is beneficial to the larger geoeconomic, geostrategic considerations of the bigger powers. As far as Europe is concerned, I think I actually totally, absolutely, after being in Europe most of my career, totally support what de Gaulle said when he took France out of NATO. He said, of what significance is a country if it doles out its defense and foreign policy to a bigger country and an organization whose decisions are dependent on the will of the largest country, which is the US. So as far as the foreign policy of Europe is concerned, I think it's absolutely and totally subservient to the will of the United States. So when Macron, got up and said, standing in China's capital, Beijing, that Europe needs to have more strategic independence, I think he is echoing what General de Gaulle said. So how Europe can, interact judiciously, on its own, as a sovereign bloc of very important political bloc and economic bloc, is very hard to comprehend, because it has already doled out its foreign policy and defense to the US and NATO. Now, let us talk about terrorism. I really was very amused when one of my colleagues here mentioned, sort of implying that Pakistan was involved in, extraterritorial terrorism, particularly in reference to India, completely ignoring the fact that Pakistan has for years now shouted and screamed at the top of its voice, giving all possible evidence to the European Parliament, to the European capitals, and every European institution of, possible. And yet, not a word is spoken about India. And the entire blame, whether it is, right or wrong, is squarely placed on Pakistan. This is something, I'm sorry, the people of Pakistan and the people of other South Asian countries are fed up of this attitude. That is why, sorry if I'm being very candid, you are talking of BMAC and whatever. Look at the attitude of the Bengalis, the Bangladesh. They have very clearly said during our conflict that Bangladesh should stand by Pakistan. We are fed up of the hegemonic, bullying of India. Look where Nepal is today. Nepal is so well connected and entrenched with the Chinese, whether it's through connectivity or through trade, through development assistance. The same goes with Maldives, who told the Indians to, please let me speak. You have given other people a leg.
No,
Just
no,
give me
no.
5 minutes.
Just I want to add one thing. If you conclude this in 2, 3 minutes, because we will be just left with 30 minutes for question answer. That's what I want to say. Say whatever you like, but uh,
No, but please understand. I mean, you've given others a bit of time. At least give me 5 minutes. So what I'm saying here is, Europe is very important to us because we are culturally, as I said, and intellectually more close to Europe than to America or the Chinese or anybody else. But unfortunately, this is not the same with the European Union, who's being very, very selective in South Asia, only concentrating on one country, closing their eyes completely to all human rights violation, all terrorism emanating from there. So we understand that you are in competition with the Chinese and you want to encircle them. All that is fine. But the people of Pakistan, we have a huge diaspora there. You are the second largest trading partner. We would like to continue to have very, very good relationship with you, but they have to be balanced. And, we cannot have an EU patronizing us, lecturing us, while still closing their eyes, absolutely blind towards where India is going and supporting. That is taken as the EU being against our national interest. So, as friends, and if you have that kind of diplomatic and political and defense, sovereignty, other than, from the Americans, then I think it is now time for the EU to rethink how it is looking at South Asia, because India today is isolated. None of the South Asian countries are with them, including Afghanistan, who in our 2 days, 3 days fight with the war with the Indians, ensured the Pakistanis that the western border will not be disturbed and will remain silent. So please, this connectivity dream of yours, BMAC, is not going to take off except in papers. It is not possible. Just like the Eurasian connectivity plan of the Americans who, in the 80s, and the Americans wanted the Europeans to pay for it, never took off the ground. So I think Pakistan, being good friends of the EU, would like to continue to have very good relations with the EU while maintaining our absolutely strategic relationship with the Chinese, because that is where our national interest, sovereignty, and territorial integrity rests. We would like EU to rethink its attitude and its policy towards South Asia, and not just hinge on India. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Naghmana Hashmi, for your remarks. Now I will give the floor to Professor Lewis, because you have the people in front of you who wants to ask questions, and I'm sure I can't see the much of those, so it will be great if you can take questions, and I think
I would love to.
Ambassador Azaz Ahmed Chaudhry, Ambassador Naghmana Hashmi, Admiral Khan Hasham, and Professor sitting with you is they're all willing to answer the question. So the floor is yours, please.
Thank you, Dr. Kamashima. I give the floor to our students and participants here, for those who want to make questions, or of course online. But let me just say, I understand and agree with most of what the Ambassador Naghmana Hashmi just said. But of course, the ambassador knows quite well that the European Union is an identified political object. So when we are mentioning the European Union, you need to differentiate not only the member states, but also the institutions. And the European Parliament is approving a lot of resolutions criticizing India on human rights issues, including on Kashmir. So, of course, we are talking about the European Union, but what the European Parliament is thinking and doing is not the same thing what the European Commission is doing. And of course, the European Council and most of the member states are thinking in another way. But I agree completely with you that sometimes there is a selective morality, and sometimes we are too much focused on India. But at the same time, we are not looking only to human rights or democracy or good governance. We are also looking, for instance, terrorism problems. And we need to recognize that Pakistan is having a lot of issues with terrorism. There are also a lot of accusations of official or unofficial authorities in Pakistan supporting some extremist and terrorist groups. So, in our perspective, we are neutral on the Kashmir issue. The European Union is a pro multilateralization of the discussion of Kashmir. But much more than Pakistan, India is against mediation, a third-party mediation, is against multilateralizing the discussions. And unfortunately, we, as the whole European Union, don't have enough leverage, power, influence, both in Pakistan and India, to be able to mediate. Ambassador, please. I see your hand. Go ahead.
Can I just respond?
Yeah, of course.
Look, that is where political sagacity and, European Union is the largest political gathering, the largest political bloc. So I find it very amusing to say that India does not want, third-party intervention or multilateralism. Excuse me, European Union, three of the European Union members are in the security. Two of the European Union members are members of the Security Council as well. You have to get up and tell India it is a multilateral issue. It is on the agenda. You cannot say we are neutral to it, because then you are defying a multilateral system. It is not possible. As far as third-party mediation is concerned, India itself has gone and asked Mr. Trump now for ceasefire and have accepted the mediation which President Trump has now offered. So I think as a very influential political bloc that understands Asia and Middle East much, much, much better than the Americans, we expect our European friends, our European colleagues to be more forthcoming, to be more rule-based, and not to say that we are neutral. And we, just because India says it's not a multilateral issue, we'll believe it. I think that really doesn't speak of the political and strategic and economic strength that European Union has, particularly in Asia. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a correction. There is only one EU member at the
now, but UK
UN
was also a member. They've just gone. They're now wanting to come back.
France speaks for itself in the UN Security Council. The European Union is not a member. But
yeah, I know you're not a member. I said two of your members.
So can we take questions from students if there are any? So if you can broaden the discussion, please.
Questions in the auditorium?
or if in case Ambassador Azaz, you want to comment anything, if there is no question. Professor Luis, is there any question?
There is a comment here.
May I ask our colleagues in Pakistan to develop a bit the relevance of their very close relationship with China, which I think is not very well understood in Europe. Thank you.
Can I answer that question?
Yes, madam, please.
As I said, I've had 5 postings in Europe, but I've also had 2 in China. So I thought that maybe let me answer that question. Let me put it this way. We want good relationship with everybody, including the US. They've been as strategic partners. We've been non-NATO allies. That also includes the EU. We've had very good relations with the EU. We want to maintain very good relations with EU. But as far as our strategic compass is concerned, there is no doubt in the minds of anyone in Pakistan that our strategic compass is very firmly oriented towards the Chinese. It always was, is, and will always be, because we might have, some economic interests with Europe and with the Americans, but they have never, ever supported us when we really needed them and were always abandoned. And our enemy, the Indians, have been supported. So if we do not maintain strategic relationship with China, then our entire national interest and sovereignty and territorial integrity would be in danger. Therefore, if you look at Pakistan today, it is not that it has happened over 5 years or 10 years. Our relationship with each other now spans 75 years. And in those 75 years, irrespective of whether we were actually in the Western camp, members of CETO and CENTO, or we were, non-NATO allies or partners in war on terror, we have never, ever compromised our relationship with China. Our relationship with the Americans have been transactional, and we want to have a long-term stable relationship with the Americans and the European Union, but there is no doubt in anybody's mind where our strategic relationship is. And I think the European Union should have no problems with that, because the Indians that they support so much and idealize so much have a strategic relationship. They had it with the Soviet Union, former Soviet Union. They have it with Russia, and under no circumstances have they compromised their relationship with Russia. And we saw that during the Ukraine crisis. So if that can be taken as a given, yes, we are strategic. India is a strategic partner with the West, but still has a preference for their Russian strategic partnership. So when push comes to shove, they stand by the Russians. So when push comes to shove, we stand by the Chinese, and the Chinese stand by us. And this is something that should be they should be understood by the Europeans and the Americans, just as they understand that and accommodate that with the Indians. So we want good relations with the West, no doubts about it, both with European Union and the Americans, but our strategic interests lie elsewhere. Thank you.
Thank you. There is a question here from the audience.
Thanks a lot. I will provide, I promise, a very brief context, but then I will ask an actual question. First of all, let me thank to the panel, Dr. Chaudhry, Dr. Kisham, the ambassador, and it's always good, and I mean it sincerely, when some dissent is brought to the debate. I think when we talk about the European Union and Pakistan, and I mostly refer to, there was some potential for the future that was mentioned in the first intervention, but I mostly mentioned the intervention of the ambassador. there were two separate issues. Either we define relationships on strategic interests, and now the ambassador was saying that for reasons that are perfectly understandable, the Pakistanis have a strategic relationship with China and they don't have with others. That's perfectly fine. Or we define ourselves as normative actors. Sometimes there is a blurring, and I agree that there is some hypocrisy from the European Union in how it has, especially in the beginning of this century, not always define if it was a geopolitical actor or a normative actor. Maybe there is an overdue effort to make this clear. But here, when it comes to this division, I frankly have a bit of a confusion. And this is where the question is. The Pakistan state has a strategic relationship with China of mutual interest over other partners. Well, the European Union or the European countries, because they are different things, they can also prefer India to other actors. This is also perfectly acceptable. And we talked about the case of France. Pakistan as a mutual beneficial strategic alliance partnership with China. France, I think it's fair to say, as it was mentioned, as one with India. Well, this is perfectly acceptable. We choose our partners connected to our interests. If we move to the normative side, while I agree with some of what was said, I think there is an exam of conscience, and I'm not exactly an expert, I have to say, on the Kashmir issue. But there was a point raised by Professor Luis Tomé about terrorism. My impression, and this is the impression that I've seen in several reports of the EU, is that, frankly speaking, because we are being frank, Pakistan has not had the cooperation on terrorism that the European Union seeks. And it's perfectly fair. Maybe there are good reasons. This is what we've been seeing. This is what we've been seeing. And this is, I think, was the point that was raised by Professor Luis Tomé. So maybe this is perceived as unfair, and I think we should not be bogged down into whether there is terrorism on each of the side, but I would really like to hear you provide a perspective, the Pakistan perspective on this point, because you provided the perspective on what Professor Luis Tomé mentioned about the India not wanting to be a multilateral issue. We got that. But what about the perception from the European Union? Maybe it is unfair that the terrorism cooperation with India apparently is better than Pakistan. So to summarize, one thing is interests, and everybody has interests. The second part on the normative part. Thank you.
So can I answer that?
Yeah.
Because I know the mechanisms there. Well, thank you very much. Yes, EU has the liberty, and each country has the liberty to choose their strategic partners. Good luck to you, and good luck to us. Now, as far as terrorism is concerned, let's see, where did terrorism emerge from? To begin with, Pakistan has been in the front line on the fight against terrorism, a terrorism that was brought to Pakistan and to the region, not by Pakistan. It was brought in because of the conflict between, the last battle of Cold War that was fought between the Soviet Union and the Western powers in the garb of a jihad. When their interests were done, they left, and left all the terrorism in the region and Pakistan to deal with it. Pakistan has lost 260 billion losses only in trade and economy, not to count anything else. We lost 90,000 civilians and soldiers in the war against. Every day, Pakistan is being, subjected to terrorism, which is aided and abated by the Indians, both in Balochistan and through their proxies in Afghanistan, to which we have constantly been giving evidence, and nobody has. We have extremely good anti-terrorism cooperation with the Americans and the European Union. That is why we've been able to apprehend some of the top terrorists and handed them over to the Americans, and there's a lot of, we have a very strong mechanism of anti-terrorism cooperation and dialogue going on with the EU as well. Having said that, How can you say that India is cooperating? They've had so many false flag operations on Pakistan, and they have attacked, they've killed their own people and blamed Pakistan, and have always refused neutral investigations, third-party investigations, international investigations. So how can they be cooperative? Right now, on the Pahalgam thing, also Pakistan said, they have nothing to do with it. Let's investigate. India does not want to come in investigations because they themselves are responsible. What cooperation? They went and killed Canadian citizens in Canada, sponsored by the Indian state. UK, same thing happened. America, they tried, and the Americans busted their, plan. Australia had to sort of declare 4 of their people, embassy people, as persona non grata, involved in planning terrorist activities. So where is the cooperation? Where is India cooperating? If India, you think, cooperates with you, please, we have asked everybody in the world, let us investigate the terrorist attacks that have happened in India and in Pakistan, and particularly the most recent. Please bring them to the table, and we'll see how much they cooperate with you. They have not cooperated. They are making you and your allies targets of state-sponsored terrorism. I think sooner or later, the world will have to wake up to this reality. Thank you.